Oh, and the live's working. Okay, so we are live streaming at this point in time, and this is the September 5th Committee of the Whole. And we are beginning considerably later than the published start time, which is 6:45. We're starting at 7:45 or 7:15, I should say. So call to order is at 7:15. And next motion is to adopt the agenda. So motion comes forward from Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Fody, that the agenda be adopted as circulated. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's carried. Next item is number 3, declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof. Anybody have an interest to declare? Okay, no declarations. And number 4 is in camera session, which there is no in camera session. We'll move right on to delegations and presentations. So first item is Ray Rombough, refund of permit fees. So Mr. Rombough, if you can come forward to the chair and sit, and we'll turn on your cameras so the people who are watching live can actually see your face and hear your voice. Microphone is on. We're good. Okay. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm just here to, actually, I forget a lot of it, but I've been sick for quite a while, and I had to build a ramp and make a better back deck at my place. And I ended up having to get 4 different permits, which I thought was quite expensive. I am ODSP, so I'm fixed income now. And I just hoping that I can get one of my permits back, refund it. I didn't think I should have to pay for 2 minor variance permits for the same ramp I had to build. Hopefully it's just going to be temporary. I'm going to be taking it down anyways. But when you spend a couple $1,000s in permits for a ramp, it's quite expensive. So I'm just hoping that I can get a refund for the minor variance permit.
Okay.
I ended up purchasing another one through Cataraqui Conservation also. So that's why I'm inquiring why I should have to buy 2.
Okay, so are there any questions for Mr. Rombough in regards to this? Go ahead, Councillor Grau.
Thank you. Kind of a startling situation there. Without going into a lot of detail, is the planning department and building department, have they been made aware of the need for you? I assume there was a need that you needed to build a ramp. You say it's temporary. There's a lot of
well, it's going to be permanent, but I needed it when I first came out of the hospital, and it took a long time to even get built. So I am quite a bit better now, but I still need it. And I'm hoping in the future that it won't be needed, but everyone was aware of my circumstance.
And just really quickly, what were the 2 minor variances that were required? Because normally minor variances don't occur on top of minor variances.
I know.
That's not the way it goes.
I ended up paying a buildings permit here and then a minor variance permit here. I was sent to Cataraqui Conservation. I paid for a permit there, built the deck. 2 weeks after I built the deck, they called me and said that you guys didn't take enough money to pay them for another minor variance permit. So I paid another one. So I actually told a couple of the people that come out to check on the ramp, the location of that, and they couldn't understand why. Yeah.
Okay. So you have had discussions with departments, and I'm sure there's been a back and forth here.
Yeah, for here
Okay.
too also.
That's that's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor Fody.
Excuse me. Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to our Director of Planning. Is there any precedence on a request such as we have here before us?
Through Your Worship, I believe that council previously refunded application fees to somebody because it was a technical zoning bylaw amendment to correct a zoning map error from the zoning consolidation that was done in 2007. if I may ask Mr. Rombough, could I get the address of your property so I'm able to bring up the application to show council what was applied for?
3446 County Road 3.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, on the permit, it actually states that I was building a dock, but because I'm on just off of Babbling Brook, and it had nothing to do with that. I was actually building a ramp going onto my back deck, which was completely the opposite way of the creek. So I think there may have been some kind of confusion in that aspect.
Thank you. Just to provide council with the information regarding what the minor variance was for. The minor variance was to permit the reconstruction and expansion of an existing legal non-complying partially covered deck. So the existing deck was legal non-complying and covered. And then there was also the addition of an accessibility ramp. So the permission that was requested through the Committee of Adjustment was an expansion of 179.8 square feet, which included the area of the accessibility ramp. I can share my screen to show council what the decision shows. Just bear with me for a moment.
Before we go too far down this rabbit hole, so the request has been made, and I'm not sure how much you understand about a delegation. So you've made the request. The way it would work is that we would ask for the director to provide the context with all the background information to come forward. It would have to be a notice of motion from one of the counselors to be considered to refund. That's the process that we would have to follow, which I think would allow us to make a better educated decision to, because your request is pretty straightforward. However, there's a number of details in the permit process that we can understand, and we could ask you to return to a committee of the whole to ask you questions about your experience if need be, that sort of thing. So because we're sort of putting the planner on the spot, and I don't want any information to go amiss that wasn't that she couldn't find just at her fingertips. She can provide a much more detailed report of the process and the steps that were taken and where challenges might have occurred. And then we can come back with a notice of motion if that's okay with council. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Jameson.
Do we need a?
We will need a notice of motion, but which can be made at the end of the meeting. Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like we'll receive the notice of motion at the end of the evening to consider your request. And that will take, it's a process. So if we're probably would be at the October committee of the whole meeting.
So when?
October committee of the whole. So that would be the first Monday of October.
So I
evening.
just come back that day then? Or?
We'll be in touch with you should we require you to attend. I'm sure either way, you'll probably want to be there.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so unless there's further comment or question in regards to that delegation, perfect. Thank you for coming. Okay, so the next item on delegations is Kristen Brown zoning bylaw revision request in regards to backyard chickens. So come on forward.
Hi.
There we go.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Kristen Brown. I'm a business and property owner in the township. I'm here to speak with you about the current chicken bylaw on my road that's prohibiting chickens. My business and my lifestyle are rooted in homesteading. I've been micro farming and growing food for over a decade on my property. I produce a considerable amount of organic produce for my kids and I, and for the products that I create for my business. Being able to add chickens to my property would be incredibly valuable, not only for the fresh eggs, but the compost that they give. I spent like $200 on compost this year, and it was not adequate whatsoever for the type of growing that I do. So I'm a single parent, and I'm constantly looking for new ways to be more resourceful and create more food security for my family and I. So my neighbors around the corner to me on Richardson Drive are allowed to keep backyard chickens. And there's also a full running farm over there. So we're all pretty accustomed in the area to farm animals. We can see and hear them. It's not really a nuisance at all that I know of. And also in recent years, the town of Gananoque has allowed backyard chickens. So a lot has changed. And, my property is at least 3 times the size of a town lot. So we definitely have lots of space. For me, at the end of the day, it's more than a hobby. It's about creating food security. We've all seen the rise of food costs. And it would just be incredibly valuable, like I said, to have access to more potentially almost free food, on our property. So thank you so much for considering this.
Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through to, got the name. Kristen, sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Kristen.
It's okay.
What is your address that you actually live on?
It's 37 Robertson Road.
So you're on the west side of Robertson Road?
Yes.
You're backing the new hotel.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
And how far down the road are you from, like,
So I'm the second house in on the road.
okay, more at the corner behind?
I'm the old Dennison house. So I'm, there's the farmhouse on number 2, the other house, and that's me.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
And how many chickens are you proposing?
Like 6 chickens. I think that's what's allowed in the community again. 6 chickens would give me and my kids 2 eggs each every single day. I'm a vegetarian. It's actually my main source of protein. 10 chickens would allow me to have that and bake everything I need to, but I would be really happy with 6 chickens.
And if I can follow up, please, Madam Mayor, to our planner on Richardson Road, which is indicated as they're allowed chickens. How many chickens are allowed in our rural area, or is there a number?
Through you, our zoning bylaw only allows chickens, which is an agricultural use, in rural and agricultural zones. So these properties are not zoned rural at this. At least I
There's
don't believe.
there's a full farm with cattle and goats and chickens and
There-
I've even bought eggs. I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble, but
Oh, no, all I'm saying, there may be pre-existing properties that are larger that have had established farms, but our zoning bylaw does not permit or chickens, which are considered an agricultural use, in a residential zone. So Lyndhurst, Sealy's Bay, none of the settlement areas are allowed to have chickens under our current zoning bylaw. Some of that is we are based on groundwater in some of the settlement areas. You have smaller lots, higher density of people. Other municipalities, I am aware that Gananoque allows it. I am aware that the city of Kingston also allows up to 5 hens on a residential property. There's certain requirements around that in terms of ensuring that the neighbors are aware of it. So in Gananoque, I know that the neighbors on either side have to sign off on it. There's certain setbacks for chicken coops and that type of thing. So our zoning bylaw would need to be amended to allow hens in certain areas of the township that they aren't currently not allowed. Most of the municipalities that do allow for it, it is limited to hens. There are no roosters permitted because of the noise that's generated by roosters. So it's something that staff would have to do more review on and require direction from council if it's something that council wants consideration of in the residential areas of the township.
Yes, thank you, Madam Planner. With that being said, is there any possibility of bringing back something to us a little more formal, or what should be our process if we wanted to entertain this?
It would be the same thing that I just mentioned with the previous delegation. So notice of motion would need to be made. So if council would like to consider this based on your request, a notice of motion needs to be made, and then that request goes to the department that would bring back the options to change the zoning bylaw. Sorry.
Yeah, through you, if council directs, staff could bring back a report in terms of options. One of those options would be providing direction to amend the zoning bylaw. If it's proposed to amend the zoning bylaw, we'd have to go through a formal process with a public meeting to amend the zoning bylaw and determine what areas of the township it is appropriate to allow.
Okay.
Good.
So Councillor Jameson, go ahead.
I hear all of this, but I also hear in the settlement areas that I deal with, as much for as against. So I think if we're going to take a look at it, we better get some public input by way of a survey of some kind of the settlement areas, because I know there are a couple of neighbors that have locked horns, certainly in Sealy's Bay on the subject. So we're going to go down the path. Let's make sure we get some consensus in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the presenter? So no further questions, but it does sound like there will be a notice of motion coming forward to have this considered to allow this to happen.
Okay.
So the formal process will begin and we'll keep you in the loop as far as how that progresses.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time, guys.
Thank you for coming. Okay, so we'll move forward with the staff reports. Planning report SR 151 23 application for communications tower T 23-001 Forbes Brothers Limited, Xplore Net 333 County Road 42. Motion comes forward from Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Jameson. Whereas a consultation process has occurred regarding a proposed communication facility tower at 333 County Road 42 for Xplore Net, represented by Forbes Brothers Limited, the agent. And whereas telecommunications facilities are regulated by Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, formerly Industry Canada, under the Radio Communication Act, which requires proponents to consult with local land use authorities and follow local protocol concerning location of such facilities. And whereas the township has a consultation protocol described in telecommunication tower and related facilities protocol, the protocol, which includes the council providing comment on the proposed tower. Now, therefore, the committee of the whole recommends that council direct staff to submit a letter of concurrence to the agent indicating that the agent has complied with the protocol, and that further that the letter shall indicate that in the event the tower is no longer required, Xplore Net Inc. shall remove the tower from the property. Discussion on the motion. Go ahead, Councillor Lackey.
Thank you, Worship, and through you. I heard it alluded to, I think, from Councillor maybe. Time frame on this tower being built. Is there a time frame to which they must complete this?
Isn't it 2025?
The applicant indicated that it would be completed likely summer 2024. In terms of timeframe in which they must complete it, there are certain funding and other mechanisms and awards that have been put out by the government, by the provincial government that's selected this. But it's also regulated through ISED, so it's not within our control to speak to the timeline for construction.
Okay, I guess the reason where I'm going with this is the fact that, you know, if it's good for Xplore, it could be good for someone else or a self-service. So would we not, you know, if that was a good location and we've said yes to this and they don't build, you know, are we eliminating someone else from possibly coming in? And
Planner is shaking her head no, so so it's really up to whoever wants to put up as many towers as they want, and as long as they get authority through Industry Canada for the simplistic of it, then it'll have to go through the protocol, same thing. So if they wanted to put one up within a kilometer of that, they have the right to do that if they follow the protocol. Any further comments or questions on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's carried. Next item, moved by Councillor Jameson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Fody, that the committee of the whole recommends that council approve the tax adjustments in accordance with sections 357, 358, and 359 of the Municipal Act in the amount of $24,580.19. Discussion on the motion. Go ahead, Councillor Gorell, and then Councillor Lackey.
Thank you. And through you, your worship, there is a party resident in Ward 3, and I was contacted on the weekend. And I must say, I made a phone call today to the finance department and received a wonderful explanation of what was going on a 358, apparently. And I would like to commend the finance department for a job well done in that explanation. It's something that none of us, I don't think, in this room have run up against before. It's not a simple reconsideration. It is, as described in this report, very specific and new to me. So I'm now able to go to that resident and explain it and present this because it was terribly confusing to said resident. And I do have one question. I think I read in the report, and it's a 358 situation where it's a, let's see here, it is an error on the part of MPAC. So I guess my question would be, and if it could be answered this week, doesn't have to be tonight, but how far back can you go in receiving benefit or from this? Is it 2 years stated in this report? I'm not 100% sure because this may have been going on for years and years. Thank you.
Treasurer, do you have?
Yeah, through you, your worship. Yeah, typically you can go back 2 years to have the adjustment made. If council wishes, we could investigate further to see if it goes back further if council wishes, but typically it's a 2 year window.
Would the finance department make that known to the resident and so on? Or is it something that the resident has to be up to speed on? Because it was, to say the least, brand new, very confusing at first. And I can't imagine that many residents, if any, have any idea of these, of the impact here. Thanks.
Yeah, typically, I would say the average resident wouldn't know. If they do contact us, we definitely take the time to educate. In terms of errors under 357, which is more things for house fires and stuff, we do work proactively with emergency services to contact residents like that to get the proper forms filled out and get that process rolling. But in terms of 358 MPAC errors, that is more on the residents. We wouldn't know otherwise.
Okay, so just one final point. It would behoove to make sure that the resident is proactive and should they contact our finance department to in that proactivity?
Yes, I would encourage every resident to read the annual assessment notices they receive from MPAC. And if they have any concerns with what's on that notice, they can certainly contact us. And whether it's through MPAC, we can certainly help them navigate those channels.
Thank you so much.
And just as an addition to that, to underscore the importance of looking at your impact assessment, you should always look at that. If there's any changes or anything you do not understand, they have a contact center that you can contact MPAC or call in here. The request for reconsideration is a free form. I know it's very different, but it's just another reminder that if I had somebody call where their assessment had changed, and so I directed them to the request for reconsideration process, which is different than what we're dealing with here. However, I just want it to be known before further discussion happens. Many of these things were already happening. The report just hadn't come to council in the past, not because it was malfeasance. It was more that it was some of the staff members in the past were unaware that the report needed to be made. But tax adjustments had happened for fire cases for years gone by. So I don't want anybody out there thinking that these things we just didn't do. We just, maybe the report never came to council and it was still being done based on a house fire happening, and we didn't make people pay taxes on a house that didn't exist. So I just want to make sure that nobody thinks there was any ill will that was out there to begin with. So Councillor Lackey.
Thank you, your worship. Through you to the treasurer. I'm just following the numbers here where the portion we had allotted $100,000 in the budget. And 9,600, basically 9,608 was the portion we've used. But I'm looking down at the account balances prior to the adjustment. So can we just follow the money back from the 100,000 that was budgeted?
Yes, through you, your worship. So this particular report's 9,600s our municipal share. And prior to this, through omits and subs and other adjustments throughout the year, there was about 21,000 in that account. So currently now, after this report, if it's approved as written, we'd have about 30,000 towards $100,000 budget for tax write-offs during the year. So we're still well below what we normally budget in a year.
but we haven't had reports to say, the other ones, should they have come forward?
Oh, sorry, your worship. The other ones are typically omits or write-offs, and they do not require council approval. MPAC returns them to us, and it's in, on the other side would be like supplementary tax bills too, where we'd get extra revenue when assessments come in throughout the year.
So going forward, this will be a process in place. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Foti, or Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to our Director of Finance. In a case like this where we may approve a reduction or adjustment to tax, is the implication to our partners, the Board of Education and the county, assumed automatic that they have to accept our approval? How does that work? Or are they affected at all?
Through you, your worship. Yes, they will be affected, and it is assumed that if we perform the write-off, as the lower tier, we do collect on their behalf. So when we do our annual reconciliation with them, the adjustments for their share are made at that time in the year-end reconciliations. So the amounts in there would come off the county and the different school boards.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions in regards to this report? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. Thank you. And moving right along to 6.3, it's been administration report SR-149-23, Lou Jeffries Arena Board Management. Moved by Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Jameson. The committee of the whole recommends that council approve in principle the creation of a Lou Jeffries Arena Board of Management and direct staff to work with the town of Gananoque to prepare the draft terms of reference for approval by both councils. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Lackey, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship, and through you, probably to the CAO. I'm a little concerned with this report, and for a couple different reasons. One, we tried to put a halt altogether on the agreement, on the payment, and we decided instead of 2 years, we would give 1 year for a chance to go through this whole agreement. Part of my argument at the time was the fact that we have some agreements with neighboring municipalities such as Westport, such as Athens, various others who we pay it's a fee that's probably not even registering on our books. But yet, for some reason, we feel the need to cover people for the GAN Arena. Now, in our last report, when we discussed this, they don't charge it out of town user fee to anyone. So why are we giving them technically an out of town user fee? To me, I was looking more for a report on why we're doing this, for what purpose are we giving our money to something that doesn't belong to us? It's not our asset. It's not, yeah, you know what? It's you can call it what you want to call it, a gesture of good faith or what have you. We wouldn't have a rink, they say, if we didn't do this, but we didn't do this up until probably the 90s, late 90s, roughly. That rink's been there since what, 50s?
60.
So, this is, they didn't come to us and ask us, during that time, hey, do you want to go halves on a rink, or do you want to pay some of this? Or they built the rink. It's not ours. So I don't want to pay anything. If they want to run it as a business the way it should, where their revenue and expenses equal out at the end of the year, yeah, which normally it won't. There's something to be paid at the end for the shortfalls. But again, it's people are coming from Kingston and other larger centers to use the ice in Gananoque because it's the cheapest. So maybe they should think about raising their ice rates and running their arena like a business without us.
Go ahead, Mr. Stan.
Thank you, Worship, and through you. I do note this year that the ice rink fees have increased by 10%. And that's been pushed through to all their user groups. The use of the facility, I think I mentioned it in the report, the township residents use it about 48% of the time. So there is a significant presence of township residents in the facility. Of course, it's up to council to consider what the relationship they'd like to have with respect to the facility going forward. And if it's a to be or not to be sort of scenario, that's certainly something that council should consider.
Follow-up?
Well, if I may, I mean, what I read here is that nothing's going to change. We're still going to sign that check and say, here you go. But what we've added is a lot more staff time devoted to this. Before it was a joint, joint board as far as council and staff on each from each municipality. That kind of was the oversight and made some decisions, recommendations that seemingly went by the wayside. It was here, it was not, it was here, it was not, it was here, then we didn't do anything. But now it's staff. And is that something that we want our staff to be devoting time to as well? So we look at it in dollars and cents. Are we looking at it from manpower dollars and cents? And because the way I see it coming up, I have some comments about our structure, as we currently do not have Parks and Recreation within the purview of our sheets here, that our organizational sheets. So I'm befuddled. There's, like I said, if we go down that path, we don't have recreation and no one to even look after this, as far as I can see, when I look at our organizational chart. So I don't know. I don't agree with it at all.
Is there anything you wanted to add to that before I take further questions?
You go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. I've got Councillor Fody, then Councillor Reed.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Just about a month ago, Councillor Jameson and myself went in support of our CAO, Steve Donachie, for a presentation to GAN Council with regarding doctor recruitment. Prior to our councillor or our CAO's presentation, there was a delegation there to speak to the Council of Cataraqui with regards to their 10% increase. I must say myself, I was taken back. If that was brought across our ears here, I missed it. I was kind of taken back in the sense that there was an ICE rate increase of 10%, and yet our name is on a equal billing on the outside of that building. I would like to know if we're going to increase rates at 10%. It became clear afterward that we were not involved in that process, in that the mayor, along with the majority of council, if not all, chose that night on what appeared to be a prepared statement, knowing these delegations were coming forward, that they said that they would offer a 7% one-time grant if they applied from each. I should reiterate there that, or should implant there that most of the ice renters were there that night. Girls hockey, men's hockey, figure skating, and it goes on and on and on. A 10% to some of those ice users amounted to over $12,000 or $14,000 a year increase after they had sent out their billing to each of their participant families or individuals to pay up for the calendar year. And thus that incited the turnout that night. From that point forward, it has, I think it comes in our packet here as well, that it's been decided there should be a board of governors, if you will, from our township and the town of Cataraqui. I'm not arguing with anything that Councillor Lackey has said, but I will say, for the sake of the 48% of the users in that arena that come from this township, I'm willing to bite my tongue for another year or two and let this board play out and see what comes of it. Because as Councillor Lackey had stated, the others, if you will, meaning outside Cataraqui in our township, are coming there because of the ice rates. And unfortunately, things have fallen behind there in a number of ways. But that's not to put blame on the current people. If they have a way of preparing to fix it, I'm willing to give them enough time to try. And if we can put some members here on that committee, which I suspect I expect that's what they're hoping will happen, then perhaps we can come up with a viable solution. Otherwise, there may be a totally different direction. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have Counselor maybe on the list next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. Again, recreation is not a money-making venture, no matter what it is. And as you all know, I've been a large proponent of not having a pool just for that fact, that you'll never make money. And a rink's no much different. Unfortunately, charging the fee that would cover the cost of actually running the facility would not sustain it. So there has to be a little bit of give and take here. And I hate to say that too. And as much as the rates over 6 years have almost doubled, which is surprising in itself, with COVID and the lack of users for a number of years here, it has taken its toll. In the condition of the building, I know that they continue to improve it. I know that the ice pad's been replaced twice already. The plant's been replaced 3 times. The Zamboni, an easy half dozen, if not more. So that's all dollars and cents, of which none of us realize that it costs money to run a facility like that. So having a board that can actually maybe help with recommendations or oversight of how the costing is put forward, because in one of their documents, both GAN and TLTI had the same dollar amount, and it was in the last of the actual report. So I'd like to see how that actually transpired and why it's written maybe that way. So there's a lot of questions about how this is being done and how it's being looked after. So, and we do need the rink. It's one of the facilities in our township that which I don't know how many multiple youth have gone through, adults. It's a needed commodity. There's no way that we can really opt out of this one. We do need it. Thank you.
Counselor Jameson, go ahead.
I know it's been a long-standing relationship. We're really discussing a building, not really a recreation program. I mean, we're looking at this year in 2023 and spending 1% of our overall budget on this building that appears to be serving not very many people. So context to me is very important. We have other facilities, including the community hall in Lansdowne that needs work, and trying to repurpose perhaps the old fire hall in Sealy's Bay. And we certainly lack pickleball lines in certain parts of the township. It's a shocking situation, but seriously, it's a very big amount of money in the context of what we are not spending on parks and recreation. So I think we need to keep that in mind. So we're talking about a building as much as anything else. I really do not like the idea of being involved in the management of an asset we don't own. And that's been raised, and it makes sense. And I'm not sure how this management board should work, but I frankly think that, and I see the Cataraqui has an asset management plan, so that they're moving down the road in what we would consider an appropriate way, because we've done that too. So my suggestion with this is this: we should continue, in my view, with our service agreement. Understanding that it's likely to go from 158 to perhaps as much as $775,000 if they're talking in those terms. And Councillor maybe mentioned that, the cost kept going up whether anybody was there or not during COVID. And that's because that building demands a lot of time. We all know that. So it's about the building. So my suggestion would be to consider committing to a 1 or 2 or even 3-year agreement where whatever they throw at us in 2024, which we are probably going to breathe heavily when we see it, but 2 subsequent years, I would say 20% less. It's a service agreement, but 20% less the second year and 20% less the third year, because what we want them to do is take charge of their building in a really meaningful way. we can't take charge of their building in a really meaningful way. And all we would be doing, in my opinion, with any kind of a management board is locking ourselves into a decision that would be brought to us, and it would be almost fait accompli, because we can't act independently of a board we would appoint. It's not logical in my experience to have all these people come back, whether it's staff or citizens, and tell us this is what we have to do. And we say, no, we need to make sure we remain, in my view, independent of their asset. At the same time, by dropping the fee 20% in subsequent years, we're really giving them the message that they have to take charge of their asset, because we need to take charge of doing something about our community hall Lansdowne and our Ascot properties and all the other things that we have to take care of, including our pickleball lines. And I say that with a smile on my face, but it's relevant to people elsewhere. So we need to look at Parks and Rec, in my view, as a whole package. And what are we prepared to invest as a council? And I think this came up during the SIP. What are we prepared to invest as a council and direct staff to increase these costs and raise the taxes? This is just a one-off. Should be in the context of a larger picture, in my view. So that's my recommendation for compromise, is take it as it comes next year and drop it 2 subsequent years significantly and let them manage their building. I would also like to, just as an aside, I couldn't find an engineering report for the building. And I'm not sure that,
There was a building condition assessment done on that.
so I couldn't find it. And it was only out of interest, but on the other hand, that's their building, that's their problem. I look at the fire hall and I look at the other things we've done the studies on, I go, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? So I really don't want to take their building on. That would be my point of view. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Callan.
Thank you. And through you, I just wanted to add, I feel very much the same as Councillor Lackey. This, of course, is a fresh issue for me to look at. And I was really shocked at how much we're spending on that building. And I think perhaps because of the area of the township that I'm from, I do take issue with the idea that it is the only indoor rink service. In Ward 2, the vast majority of kids that use a rink for either for figure skating or hockey or public skating, they go to Westport or Athens. So I'm not disagreeing with the 48% usage. I would kind of like to see a breakdown of how that breaks down, but it's foreign to me for this township to be using that rink that much. And I completely agree with my fellow Ward 2 councillor that is not our asset. And I can see finding some other funding mechanism to support the members of our township that are using that facility, but I would like to know how many that is. And I do think that that's a huge chunk of money that is likely to increase. And I think it could probably be spent in a much better way in our township if we're looking at it as a whole recreation package. So I think, if we're for now, well, as we are spending money, if they're to form a board immediately, I'd like to have us have a say in that. But I was really shocked by the amount. Thank you.
Further comment or question on that? Councillor Lucky, I'll let you get back in and then I'll make some comments.
Okay, I'll make it quick. Like I said, we've had oversight committees and we've done this. I'm not going to say it again over and over again. It's like beating a dead horse. I'm just going to say I'm not for it anymore. It started out as a gesture of good faith. Now all of a sudden it's become this, and this is not, I believe, what our community signed up for.
Okay.
Because I don't want to start giving $170,000 to Westport, $170,000 to Athens, $175,000 to Kingston, because many of our kids go to Kingston. They go to Brockville because the caliber of hockey isn't good enough in Cataraqui. So there's a lot of people in our community that don't use that arena, that use the bigger centers. So fortunately, that's the way it is. Thank you.
Okay. So I've listened to all the members of council. I'll just weigh in on some of my own thoughts. To the comments about where this is sort of started from and where it's ended up, I won't disagree that originally it was a gesture of good faith. However, if memory serves me correctly, Councillor Kelman, there's about, I believe, shy of 400 users of that would be attributed to the township. And I stand to be corrected on that because they have given us data on users. That's just for minor hockey, girls hockey, men's league, and figure skating. So any public use is not tracked as far as who is coming in and out, what school groups, what have you. But to the point that Councillor Jameson has made in regards to a specific plan to reduce their burden on us, because my guess is that if we pull the plug and say we're out altogether, and we'll give you the same as what we give Athens or Westport, which right now I believe is $100 a family or $200 a family or something to that effect. So it's significantly less. I think that the town of Gananoque would struggle quite a bit from that. And then we would have a very angry mob of hockey players in here. So while I'd like to think that it could be as simple as saying, we're willing to support our users the same way we do at other municipal arenas, that would potentially put them in a financial hardship that they may not be able to open the doors. I guess my thought on this management board was such that it would create an arena to have a frank discussion, such as what has happened here this evening, to basically say, look, this is where we started. This is where we've ended up. This is not palatable for our taxpayers. And what is the plan going forward? Because I think one of the main things that has always interested me in this discussion is that we've been band-aiding a building that needs replacement. So to the point that we're funding an asset that isn't ours, when the netting disintegrates or the light bulbs need to be changed, or those are maintenance, but yet they're still considered capital costs because there's such a large price tag. So it's great to plod along and just sign the check and everybody's happy for the time being until we go back to budgeting when everybody's not happy about that. But there's really been no thought into what the future means. And I looked at this as an opportunity to create a group of individuals that want to look at what the future looks like for the area in hockey. And to Councillor Lackey's point, if we cease to fund this, would there be a rink? Your comment was somebody would step up. Somebody would, if it was that important to the community, whether it be our community, town of Gananoque, Convergence. But I don't think that we've asked the question correctly to the point that Councillor Jameson made. We've accepted the increases, but what's the overall plan? Because if we're just going to band-aid this building for another 10 years and it's going to fall down around our ears, that's not a plan. That's a wish. So I guess I look at it as a different way of approaching the problem that needs to be solved, because it's still a viable group of individuals that want to get together for recreation in the winter. So go ahead, Councillor Lackey.
Sorry, this is my last, I promise. First of all, I want to bring up the curling club. When we pay the curling club, most of the users there are from the township. The rowing club, most of the participants of the rowing club are township citizens. They've asked that we had this argument many years ago with the curling club, and we came to the conclusion that they're private. They don't qualify. We didn't back them. Again, we could do the same as we did with them and say, okay, town of Gananoque, come to our grants, apply for a grants application. We'll see if we can give you some money there. My other point was that I had this actually, I wanted to say this at our special meeting. I was going to ask where this report was for tonight, because we've already left it late. It was already mentioned that they'd come out with their fees for the year. And we asked for this during budget time and said, okay, we want to have this done so as not to impede the next year's budget process. But here we are in September, when we had since December last year. So I'm a little disappointed with that as well, that we're sitting here under the gun again. Well, geez, let's leave it for another year. And another year go by. Oh, shoot, it's September. Let's leave it for another year. It's going to keep going and going and going. So I'm not for this at all.
Okay, so I'm going to recognize Counselor, maybe then Counselor Jameson, and then I think I'll call the question unless Counselor Grill wants to
Thank
weigh
you.
in on this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just looking at the 2018 usage, and it did state that Gananoque, we had 254 people, TLTI had 325, and other were 83, for a total of 642, I believe it says, but it does have Gananoque Minor Hockey, Gananoque Girls Minor Hockey, Figure Skating, Men's Hockey League, Seniors Exercise Class. That's what they have listed here. But on the one for 2021, there's quite a few other agencies that are added into that. And again, GAN had 202, TLTI had 248, and other were 91. So there is a great, proportionately, there's quite a few people coming from our township to use this facility. So
Counselor Jameson.
Well, it's 1% of our budget for a really small group of people doing one activity. So there's that. It's a building we don't own. There's that. So I'm going to go back and repeat myself. If we've got to go a little farther down the road, we're going to end up on another year. And I mean, I know. Yeah. So, but the idea of the declining balance is to light a little fire. What worries me about boards of management, always worries me about boards of management, is it has the potential of taking the decision-making power, in a sense, out of the hands of the actual people that have to decide the money. And that I've seen in another life. But more importantly, we've actually moved away from those kinds of terms of reference and formality by creating working groups. Now, I can see trying to go down the road a little bit farther while we find a way out, and having a working group, maybe a coalition of the willing, if you will, to have those discussions that need to happen with Gananoque about that particular facility, recognizing that it seems to be, owned by everybody and financed by no one in some way. But I just do not want to see us formalize something for an asset we don't own. But I think we need to be willing to have the conversation. And if we just walk away like that, I appreciate what you're saying. They may have to mothball it, but they probably needed to be thinking about that for some years now. And I really would like us to focus on our own stuff, because it's really not had the investment it needs, but it has a staff that could actually deliver if we gave them a little money to do things. So
To be contrary to your comment, and just allow me some indulgence, if you will. We had a working group that didn't work. To your point, Councillor Lackey, there was people that were supposed to get together and under our last term of council, it wasn't formalized, and it sort of happened. There were a couple of meetings here in this council chamber, but there's no real mandate for what it was supposed to be. With the terms of the Committee of Management, it's looking at not only the management, the revenue, the expenses, but also the replacement of the building and what that looks like in the future. That's how I understand it. Am I clear? Okay, CAO. So while I appreciate your point is that it ropes us into something long-term. To me, I look at this as our ability to really dig in to the financials of everything, look at what the long-term plan is, and basically draw the line in the sand and say, we can't justify this to the taxpayers anymore. How do we be good partners without giving away the farm? So that's my take on it. So Councillor James or Councillor Grell, did you have anything to add to this, or are you? Okay. So I'll let Councillor
Okay.
Fode or Deputy Mayor.
Just one more comment as kind of a follow-up. So do you want to take this down on the wire and have a vote? Or do we want us to think about deferring this and finding some middle ground? Because at the end of the day, you know, it might win and I'll go away unhappy. Not because I'm against it, but I think it could be structured better.
Is that a motion to defer?
A motion to defer, and let's think about this in a different way. Because I'll tell you one more comment. I found it kind of all over the shop because I'm not sure staff is really on the page here with us with respect to this. And I'm not knocking staff. I'm just saying, I'm just not seeing the clarity of the kind of reporting we get from staff that says, here's what we need to do. Here's why we need to do it. Here is how much it's going to cost. I love those reports, whether I agree with them or not. I appreciate clarity, and this isn't there. So I'd like to defer it and have a chance to kick the can around a little bit more. Thank you.
So the motion to defer to the September council meeting, is that enough time, or you're looking to kick this down to October? Okay, so the motion to defer to the October committee of the whole meeting? Is that what you're asking? Okay, so the motion is made. I need a seconder. Deputy Mayor Fode. So the motion to defer to the October council meeting is on the floor, with the understanding that council, along with council, has the ability to speak to the CAO and other members of council about what other options they might be looking for, because I think the CA is going to look for some direction on that. Okay. So the motion to defer to the October council meeting is made by Councillor Jameson and Deputy Mayor Fode. All those in favor of deferral? And that is carried. Okay. Next item is 6.4 Administration Report SR-139-23 Cataraqui Region Conservation Authority Cost Apportioning Agreement for Locally Supported Services. Moved by Councillor Jameson, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council authorize the Mayor and the Clerk to execute the cost apportioning agreement for locally supported services with Cataraqui Region Conservation Authority in the form annexed as Exhibit A to Administration Report SR-139-23. Discussion on the motion. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Fode.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. When I read this proposal, the second and third line is what jumped off the page here. Cost apportioning agreement. When we first sat at this council, Cataraqui Conservation came to us with our allotment of expense for their expenditures. Now it's transcended into a cost apportioning agreement. It scares me. We're not much different on this subject, I don't think, than the GAN Arena. We're tying ourselves into somebody else's idea of what an apportioning agreement is. And then more importantly, what is that cost and what's the dollars and cents attached to it? I have a lot of faith in the council member we've appointed to sit on this board, and I would like to hear some other thoughts on this, but that's my thought when I first read this. Thank you.
Okay, I'll recognize Councillor Gorell. He wants to get in to say something.
Through you, Your Worship, and having been on the job for 10 days now, it's been a whirlwind, but I did participate in a meeting and it raised a lot of questions in my mind, which I raised with them. One, it's always interested me in why we pay them, not why, how is it arrived at that we pay them $100 and some odd thousand a year? And the answer is, and it comes out of a regulation called 4402-22, and it is a complex figuring on the modified current value assessment of the township and any portion of the township that is within the watershed. So it's beyond us. And it really is from the Ministry of Environment. They push that on to the CA. It's in the Conservation Act, and that's one of the regulations. So number one, it's called the general levy. And as I see it, we don't have much say in it. On top of the general levy, which gets dished out to 11 communities in the watershed of CRCA, right? Something that jumped out at me was Rideau Lakes pays less than half we do. The reason is because only half of their township is in that watershed. The other half is in Rideau Valley. So they probably pay Rideau Valley a bunch of money and CRC a bunch of money. It's very confusing. On top of the general levy, and this gets more to your point, Terry, on top of the general levy, there are two special levies. Not every municipality has them. The first one is specific properties. And the property that we have is Marble Rock. Lemoyne Point might be Kingston. They deal with that. We don't. So the special levy deals with what goes on here. Second and thirdly, water control structures. So they are apportioned once again, 30% to us, 15% somebody else. With respect to the report that's in front of us, and this is where it gets interesting, I'll try and keep this brief, but the CRCA is mandated to have 3 classes of fees. One is a mandated fee, and it covers such things as natural hazards, which we get reports from them, right? Land owned by the CA authority. In other words, they own land out and about here, which you all know that requires some upkeep. And then source water protection. That's a big one. That, and then programs and services related to the duties and functions, responsibilities. That's a catch-all. Secondly, the second class would be some of the stuff I believe that got whacked by Bill C-23. And that specifically would be Section 2111 shall not provide under Section 1 a municipal program or service related to reviewing or commenting on proposals, application, or other matters. That's got whacked by C-23, right? Because we always see that the CRCA is reporting on hazards, erosion, and flooding. That's 14806. And you see that in every report they write, and they say, we can't comment on . So that leaves us number 3. Number 3 is what we're talking about here. And it may be an apportionment, but the amount of money we're talking about here is really quite small. Of interest, though, is what it's talking about. It's talking about, and if it was more money, I think I'd be more concerned. But it is about things like, bring it up here. It says it in the report, but I'll just read it again. Things like, excuse me, down here. Tree planting, schools and education, and programs. Okay. Is that what we want? That's a little bit of the overload that CRCA gives us. It's a minuscule amount of money, relatively speaking. The 170,000 we can't really argue against because that's out of even their control, I think. Pardon me, I should say that's not entirely true. They can reel in their budgets, but I didn't see anything in my 10 days there that was outlandish. It just chugs along like a little mini bureaucracy. And they are trying to shed or move their facility. They're going to share with somebody. I haven't got all the details on that. What's my last point here? So in answer to your questions, Terry, this apportionment falls under category 3. We could say, absolutely not. We don't want schools being educated on this. We could say tree planting is supposed to pay for itself. By the way, everything I read, it pays for itself somehow magically. And so schools, the programs. This is where it gets a little wonky. Forest therapy, stuff like that is included in that. If we wanted to review that and go, do we really want all that stuff in there? I don't know. Myself, I'm skeptical, but It's a relatively small amount of money. CRCA is forced to ask the municipalities to do these memorandums of understanding. They don't have a choice. They do it to all 11. I don't know exactly the apportionment. They claim it's on the general levy. Fine. They go under the same pressures as we do doing budgeting. I don't think there's a lot of wiggle room going into the budget period coming up in the fall. But I will say that there is in the CRCA phasing, there is room for consultation in October, November, December before the finalization. How much of it's going to be there, I don't know. This memorandum of understanding, it does lead into the forest therapy and the kids and so on. So I don't know the answer to that, but that, I don't know if that answers your question. It's a small apportionment of something much bigger.
Thank you, Councillor Grell. Actually, it did shed a lot of light on a number of things that that I was questioning myself. I did have to smile a moment ago when you said forest therapy. It made me think of a CBC radio broadcast the last couple of days that talked about healing lodges and the number of prisoners that we have that are sent to healing lodges, and they merely walk out their front door yet to be seen again. So hopefully we're not going to, divest into that direction with this. But thanks for your clarity. I appreciate it.
Okay, any further comments or questions in regards to this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's carried. Next item is moved by Councillor Garrell, seconded by Councillor Kelman, that the committee of the whole recommends that council direct and authorize the municipal clerk to execute agreement with eScribe Software Limited for the provision of the eScribe transparency bundle for the Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands meeting management software to be implemented and functional by January 1st, 2024 in the amount of $18,067 plus net HST. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. My only question was, how much are we paying for iCompass over this time frame, or what has it cost us in relation to the new eScribe?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Great question. So we've been paying roughly around $15,000 a year with iCompass. So with eScribe, it would be not including the one-time implementation fees for the first year, I would be about $15,304 yearly with a 3% increase each year. And I would like to note that with eScribe, in comparison with iCompass, the functions that are offered through eScribe would be additional costs with iCompass that the township is looking for.
Any further comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Kelman, and then Councillor Cataraqui.
Thank you. And through you, I just had a question about hardware. Would we need to replace cameras or anything like that to switch systems, or would everything be able to be used with the new system?
Through Your Worship, thank you for your question. Nothing would have to be replaced.
Okay, further comments? Oh, sorry, Councillor Lackey.
Just a quick question, and looking at the points, are we getting the regular version or the Pro, which has more?
We are getting the transparency bundle, which fits the transparency needs. So it would include the webcasting and the internet publishing as well. Yes.
Any other comments or questions? As a user of iCompass as well as eScribe, eScribe is simpler. The county uses eScribe just for a user interface, just if anybody was interested. So anyways, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. Okay, so next item, moved by Councillor Kelman, seconded by Councillor Garrell. The three readings and final passage by bylaw number 23-052, being a bylaw to establish designation of municipal significant events policy in the Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands. Discussion on the motion. I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's carried. Okay, any unfinished business? Any other business? Go ahead, Councillor Lackey.
Sorry, I don't see anywhere else I can chime in here, but we've already hashed out sort of the Gan Arena agreement, which is deferred. Thank you, Councillor Jameson. That leads me into our recreation. Parks and Rec, to be more specific, and the lack thereof. I really don't see us as having any recreation to speak of. If somebody asked me, who do I talk to about renting the ball diamond, I really have no idea. You know, I know who our department heads are, and I know most of the people underneath them, but I know of people that I can go to as a counselor. Unfortunately, this is not one of them that I see as an easy task. I'll just broaden that a little bit. I think what I'd like to ask is services in the Municipal Act. It is our job as counselors to decide what services the municipality provides to our taxpayers. That's our job. And I don't see a lot of services that we used to provide that we should provide. I'd like to know what we provide and how much it costs. I know there's a silhouette in the budget, but honestly, I'd really like to know more specifics. I look at these directory sheets that we get of extensions. I look forward to them all the time. The changes now, I can go back as far as you want, but I'll just go back to our term. And in our term, we've hired 16 new people. Just positions that weren't there. I can break them down into department. Now I know there's legislation that's come out. We've got human resources now, and we've got our IT. That's all well and good, but I'd like to know the services. I want to know as a counselor what I'm providing. I know things progress gradually. We don't see them all the time. They do come individually. Well, we need this person because, or this has changed, so we now need to do this. Like I said, I can go back and give you more specifics, but in just from 2019, we've had like 29 hires from the time that we built this building. I can break it down. Like I said, we've had 11 in public works more. We've had 5 more in the building department. So that's just something that I'd like to see come before us prior to budget, because as my job as a counselor, I want to say, okay, do we need this service? Do we need this service? This service, are we getting value? Is it too much? Is it too little? I want to look at it in terms that the residents can understand as well. Because right now we can see by the renovations to the building that we're a growing machine here. I want to go to, like I said, I have a number of things. I want to go to natural gas. Are we still pursuing natural gas? We discussed this many times here in this council chambers. There's been opportunities with different levels of government that they were pushing for natural gas in rural municipalities to help agriculture. Now I know just recently, I believe it was Elizabethtown Kitley succeeded. They are now getting natural gas. That's something that was always brought up and never taken to the next level. Getting back to recreation or the lack thereof, Parks and Recreation is a position that actually you get an education for. You can go to university or college for that particular job, and we don't have it. I understand kind of where it went, but as was indicated with our pickleball courts lines, it seems that it's recreation is a blur. There's no specific things that I can see, no specific person doing programs. Grant, when was the last time we got a successful grant application or put one in for anything to do with our parks or our swimming lessons or lifeguards, or which again, we didn't have any swimming lessons. Why is beyond me. I do know why, but I'm not sure why we didn't come up with an alternate solution. So again, I think the brunt of what I'm trying to say is, first and foremost, is our service levels and what services we provide, what it's costing us. Because we sure have a lot of people doing things. Not saying they're not busy. I'm just not saying they're not busy. Yeah, and I mean, our parks are not doing very well. There's lots of plans, as I indicated in the last meeting, on the wall. Nothing's been done with them. No money's been appropriated to them. So that's just in my mind. I want to get that out there.
Okay. So would it be appropriate to have a report come back? Your request was in regards to understanding the service levels and the changes in staffing since 2019.
Oh, I can do that myself. I can go back to when we built this building.
Right,
So
but I think what I'm trying to
It's double. We're now 50. What are we now? We've gone up by 29. I don't know. HR would have it. I think we're at 50 or 51 now.
That's what I'm trying to get to. So I'm trying to better understand what it is you're asking. Is this a notice of motion to come forward with a
Well,
report?
anytime there's a notice of motion, it generally comes at the next council meeting, and I think this is beyond a week's.
Oh, no, this is a notice of motion. Next on the agenda is notice of motion.
Oh,
So it would come, so you would work with the clerk to come forward with a notice of motion, which would be presented at council, which would provide clarity to the staff to what specific things I made a list of notes. I know that the CAO has been making notes all along. So I just want to make sure that rather than try to answer the questions off the cuff or provide the context that you're looking for, that we get the right information.
Yes.
So I would assume that is a notice of motion.
Yes, if that could,
Okay.
I just didn't want to put someone under the gun to have it done in 7 days.
No. So you'll need to speak to the clerk in regards to timing and as far as getting that in.
Very good.
Okay. Any other business? Go ahead.
Thank you,
Councillor.
Madam Mayor. My question comes with the 32 highway. Some of it has been repaired, some of it has not. And my biggest thing is part of the portion that was washed out not getting done because they're waiting for CN to pony up some money from the county. So it is because they painted lines, but they haven't painted all the lines either. So I was kind of skeptical. Okay, what did they do, or what are they waiting for? What's the process and why it hasn't been really repaired well? It's drivable, yes, but it's not as well as many other portions of the highway.
So your question is in regards to the section of 32 that was destroyed by the Beaver Dam letting go?
Yes.
Okay. So my understanding is that is for road repair, meaning that what you've seen further down the road is like a microsurface or slurry seal, which is just a bit of a prolongation technique that keeps the road in better shape for a longer period of time. So it's a different set of equipment, different set of expertise. So my understanding is that is slated for total repair rebuild because of the underpinning. And I don't have a timing on that, but I can get that from county and I will be there tomorrow.
Yes.
So I can find out when that's being done. I don't believe that we are waiting on CN because that is the crux of it. We can't make a claim to CN until we know what the costs are to repair it.
Yeah.
And we have to repair it regardless for safety reasons. So I will find out dates and times.
That answers that. And then the second one was kudos to the operations department and all the road work that they have done. There's many roads that have been resurfaced and they've actually had the graders out before the buses were out on the roads and required. And I know I even had a call for one road, which was the 1st of August, and they did go out and do it. So I'm glad to see that we are improving some of the processes. Thank you.
Okay. Any other business? Seeing none, we'll move on to the notice of motion. So we've already, Councillor Lackey has already indicated that he'll be talking to the clerk in regards to previous planning and forward planning. And so the other two notices of motion that were previously indicated earlier in the meeting was in regards to allowing backyard chickens and also the request for information for details on the request for rebate on the permitting fees for Mr. Rombough. So who would like to take responsibility for those respective motions? Okay, so you mean for the chickens? For the permit, okay. So Councillor Jameson will be working with the clerk to bring forward a notice of motion to entertain the rebate of the fees for Mr. Rombough, and who is taking on the backyard chickens. Councillor Lackey. The arena's been deferred till October. So the deferred motion, it will be re-tabled at the October Committee of the Whole. Until that time, though, it is up to council to speak with the CAO. Obviously not in a quorum situation, but to have conversation with your fellow councillors about where you'd like to see this go so that we can provide some specific direction. One way or the other, either pass the motion as is presented or amend it to whatever the will of council will be. Okay. You have that, Madam Clerk? Okay. So with that, the mayor's update. I hope everybody had a great long weekend. I hope everybody was able to get out to enjoy the sunshine. Having said that, just a reminder that school is back in session. Please be careful out there in the mornings and the afternoons. Bus safety is very important. It's very important for the littles, but also one of our counselors, which we appreciate her dedication to that job every day, which would have been very hot and stuffy on a bus this afternoon. So I'd just like to send condolences to the family, the Rosen family, who lost a loved one on the St. Lawrence River over the weekend. The boating accident that happened near Brockville, where somebody was killed. Mr. Rosen was the owner of Kimco Steel and a big powerboat person, very supportive of a number of events, but loved being on the water. And he owned a property in the west end of our municipality. He's an employer of a very large company in Kingston, many employees who live and work in our township. So to his family and those who cared about him most, we send our condolences. I'd also like to remind people that the Township Times publication for October to December will be mailed out this week. So please keep an eye out in your mailbox. The final tax bill deadline for 2023 is September 15th. So if you haven't already paid your taxes, please come in and do so to avoid any interest accruing. Our recreation programs are starting up in October. Please register for a program on our website today. So the list of the programs that are running, such as exercise class, archery, I think there was a few others, are on the website. Also, to remind everybody, there is a Women in Firefighting Day, which is happening September 16th, I believe, the morning of, right before Turkey Fair. So any females that are interested in getting into the firefighting world are very welcome to come and join us at Station 4. Sorry, Station 4. I was talking about ambulance stations today. I had a bit of a blank. So I'm going to be there. I'm going to endeavor to be there before we end up at Turkey Fair at, I believe, 10. So Turkey Fair is on the same day. So if you're heading that way, be careful. There'll be people on the road. There'll be traffic. But hopefully if we don't see you at Women in Firefighting Day, we'll see you at Turkey Fair. So we wish the best of luck to the Lyndhurst District Chamber of Commerce who are running this, who have been working very hard along with staff to get the permitting and assistance that they require in order to get this off the ground. So all the best of luck to them and another successful Turkey Fair. Is there any other event that I'm missing? Go ahead, Councillor Maybe. Oh, Terry Fox.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, the Terry Fox run on the Sunday of the 7th, I believe it is. I was pulling my camera to make sure I had the date right, or my calendar. I hate to give you the wrong date, but yes, the 17th, the Sunday. So the Leeds 1,000 Islands Terry Fox will be running from Rockport Recreation Hall at 9 o'clock. And the Cataraqui run is at 10, and proceeds to Terry Fox, finding a cure for cancer. and the encouraging teams. And I know our diligent co-member of that, the dream team, as it's called, works in the building, McKenna Modler, who is a champion for cancer research. And if you know her story, then you know why. So she's been working very hard on this one this year also. The other event is on the 13th, which is the OLG in Cataraqui for the TL and Cataraqui recognition of their contributions to our townships and town. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay. So, any other items of announcement? Go ahead, Councillor Deputy Mayor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's a slippery slope to start mentioning the deceased because you inevitably miss a number of people and their individual inputs. But just a few days prior to Mr. Rosen was a longtime lawyer in our area, Harry Clark. Harry Clark was instrumental in a number of things that people knew little about. The one that maybe is most notable that a lot of people do know about is his input and creation of the Cataraqui boat line back in the day. He was one of the 4 original partners that created that, and quite frankly, put this area on the map with our boat tours. And thus it has spread out to other boat tours in Kingston and Rockport and Brockville and so on. And I could go on with just the ones I know that Mr. Clark accomplished, and he was a silent partner, and that was just the way he chose to be. But I think we'd be amiss if we didn't give him credit for a lifetime accomplishment of what he's created for the town of Cataraqui and our township. Thank you.
Duly noted. And Harry Clark was a great friend to many, and he was a bit of a legend and still remains so in the Brockville legal world. I think there's still a chair with his name on it, but he was a great friend to many, and we are sending condolences out to his family and those who cared about him most. And I've come across a number of people who have, everybody has a Harry story. And yes, so to the point that I made earlier about the boating accident, and I forgot to mention it earlier, it happened on the anniversary date of another terrible boating accident, where we lost a little boy who wasn't wearing a life jacket. So just keep in mind that when you're out on the water, please, please, please be safe at all points in times. Please wear your life jacket. Please have the proper safety equipment. We hopefully don't want to meet you out there with our firefighters or ambulance needs if need be. So just try to be as safe as possible. Accidents happen, but regardless, we just want everybody to be safe. With that, I think that's everything. So I will put the motion for adjournment forward from Councillor Lackey and seconded by Councillor Kelman that the committee of the whole adjourn 8:43 p.m. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. Thank you, everybody.